Okay, so today we're going to move over and start talking about standard form of an equation that's a linear equation. And so standard form is ax plus by is equal to c. So standard form is great when you are looking for x and y intercepts because a, b, and c are all values, some number. And so when you're looking for your, for example, y-intercept, you're going to replace the x with 0, and this becomes 0, and then all you have to do is divide by your b on both sides to find out what the y-intercept is. Same thing for the other direction, x-intercept, you would plug a 0 in here. This becomes 0, and you would just have to divide by a to find c. So very easy to find your intercepts if we're using standard form. A lot of times though, when we work with standard form, it's easier just to convert it into slope-intercept, because a lot of times what we're looking for is to be able to quickly graph something, or to find an initial value, or to find the rate of change, and that's all easier done in slope-intercept form. So while we do see standard form quite often, a lot of times we have to convert it. So that's what we're going to spend our time doing today, is converting standard form into slope-intercept form, so that we know how to solve for y and get the y by itself, so that we can have it in that slope-intercept form. Okay, so questions like this, a lot of times you'll see something to ask you what the slope and the y-intercept of a line is, but it's written in standard form. This is the reason why we have to get it into slope-intercept. So remember, slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. So we want to isolate the y. That's our goal. So in this case, we have 2x plus y is equal to 3. To isolate the y, all we need to do is subtract the 2x. So what we'll have left is this 3 minus 2x. Now, remember that it doesn't matter if it's mx plus b or y equals b plus mx. Either way, it's perfectly fine to write it. So we can leave it like this, or if you prefer the more standard way of writing it, it's negative 2x plus 3. And so the question is asking us to identify the slope. Well, the slope in this case is negative 2. It's the number that's being multiplied by the x, the coefficient, and the y-intercept is 3. It's the constant that's by itself. Okay, and so that's the type of questions you may see with a standard form. All right, so now looking at question number 3. This time we have x minus 3y is equal to 12. So to get y by itself, we first have to subtract the x. That leaves us with negative 3y is equal to negative x plus 12. Now keep in mind that it's understood that there's a negative 1 here in front of that x. So now to get y by itself, we have to get rid of the coefficient. So we have to divide by negative 3. So on this side, it leaves me with a y, but over here, I have to divide everything by negative 3. So what happens is I have this negative 1 divided by negative 3, which just simplifies to 1/3. Bring down my x, and then 12 divided by negative 3 becomes negative 4. So my equation for slope-intercept becomes y equals 1/3 x minus 4. So my slope is 1/3, and my y-intercept is negative 4. So it does get a little bit tricky when you do have to divide by that coefficient when there's a coefficient in front of the y, but it all works out. Sometimes we just have to do a couple of extra steps or little things here and there just to simplify. So if I look at number 4, now here again I have to get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract the 4x, and I'm left with negative y is equal to 0 minus 4x. So I can drop that 0, and I can leave it as negative y is equal to negative 4x. Now I don't want to have this negative y there, so we can either multiply everything by a negative 1, or because it's a negative 1 here, we can divide. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. So I end up with y is equal to a positive 4x. So that becomes my equation. Then, of course, I need to find the slope, which is 4, and the y-intercept, which is 0, because there's no constant out here. Okay, so using a lot of the same skills that we learned earlier, or earlier in this unit. All right, so looking at number 7. So this one, we have a coefficient there in front of the y, so we are going to have to do that division again. But let's start by moving the 6x, so I'm going to add it over here. I have 4y is equal to 6x plus 20. I'm going to divide by 4, and then I'm going to divide all of this by 4 as well. So I end up with a slope of 6 divided by 4, which we know we can simplify down to 3/2 x, and then 20 divided by 4 becomes a positive 5. So our equation becomes 3/2 x plus 5. Our slope is this m value, 3/2, and our b, or our y-intercept, is a positive 5. Okay, so of course you can practice these. They are side by side. This is a very good example for this one, and you can kind of look at those as a guide to help you out. Alright, so on the back here, a couple more examples. Let's look at number 9. We're going to subtract 3x to get the y by itself. That leaves me with 3y is equal to negative 3x minus 12. And then, of course, I need to divide everything by 3. So y is equal to negative 3 divided by positive 3, which is negative 1, or negative x. And negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. So my slope ends up being negative 1, and my y-intercept is negative 4. Now, number 11. Let's look at this one. We are going to have to, again, subtract the 12x. That gives me negative 9y is equal to negative 12x minus 9. Okay, and then I have to divide by that coefficient all the way across the board. So I have negative 12 divided by negative 9. That's going to reduce to positive 4/3, and then negative 9 divided by negative 9 is a positive 1. If you're uncomfortable with the fractions, make sure you're using your calculator. When you do negative 12 divided by negative 9 in your calculator, you're going to get a decimal, but remember we can convert that decimal into a fraction and take it as our smallest or simplified fraction. Alright, so make sure that you're using your calculator and the assets that you have available to you. So our slope here is going to be 4/3, and our y-intercept is going to be a positive 1. Okay, so again, use this question to help you with this one, use this one to help you with this. These are guides and kind of examples to help you along.